Next, we'd like to invite Melanie Heath, the Associate Commissioner, Utah System of Higher Education, to come up. And then after her presentation and this agenda item, we'll have a break.
Hey there.
Melanie, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Melanie Heath. I'm an Assistant Commissioner with the Utah System of Higher Education. Here with me, I have Spencer Jenkins, who's the Chief of Staff for the Commissioner of Higher Education. So thank you so much for having us. I especially wanted to thank those of you who were integral in the planning and success of the K-20 Summit. Especially a big thank you to Vice Chair Brittany Cummins, who led a really great discussion at the summit and graciously got her steps in by walking around and passing the mic around to everyone like Oprah. It was really great. Thank you. Also, big thank you to the State Superintendent for her leadership in this. Last time we talked a little bit about the K-20 Summit's purpose. I'm happy to review any of that again. Really, we wanted to have a statewide conversation about post-secondary access and what that looks like in each agency, knowing that this is the space that really touches us all between the three boards, education boards. I think it was a really great event. We're hoping to have one next year and would love you all to attend and participate. One of the outcomes of the event is this joint resolution, which is before you today. We chatted through a draft, I think it was last month. We got some really good feedback from you all that some of the language was duplicative. We tried to clarify the kind of college versus post-secondary in several instances in the resolution. The most important thing to direct your attention to is the kind of outcome of the resolution, which is the development of this four-pronged framework to set up really a post-secondary access framework in the state. And just to review that again really quickly, the purpose of the resolution is that each board direct their respective chief executives to establish and align goals and resources that achieve the following outcomes. So one is encourage students to set and achieve post-secondary goals that best help them succeed in their future workforce and educational endeavors. Two, provide a college access advisor for every Utah high school student to help them successfully access information about potential career pathways and available post-secondary education options in Utah. Three, maintain a statewide authoritative online platform to guide K-12 students and returning adults in potential career pathways and available post-secondary educational options in Utah. And lastly, reprioritize state dollars to improve access to post-secondary education options, especially for underrepresented populations that lead to high demand, high wage, or high skill career options in Utah. A quick note, this has been before the State Board of Regents as well as the UTEC Board of Trustees, and in each instance it was passed unanimously. So we're here on our last stop on the road show. But again, I'm happy to take any questions or clarify anything for you all. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Board Member Belknap?
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking for a word clarity. Is that okay if I direct here?
Yes.
Thank you. On number 2, it says provide a college access advisor. Are we talking about trade as well as universities when we
Yes.
use the term college?
When we use the term college, yes. So for us with the Board of Regents and UTEC, when we say college, we mean 1, 2, 4 or more. We've clarified this with the UTEC presidents who are supportive of that too. Yeah.
Okay. Board Member Jenny Earl?
I think I still have similar concerns I had last time, but just a couple things. First of all, I think education in the next 5 years, maybe even 10 years, is going to look completely different than what it looks right now. I think we're even seeing it in the building of our buildings that we're currently building. I feel like there's still some ambiguity to me as far as this idea of oh my goodness, I can't get the word out. You know what I'm talking about. Reprioritizing. Just kidding. That's what I kept trying to say 3 times. State dollars. I don't know what that is. And so it's really hard for me to put my vote behind that when I'm not sure. To me, it seems ambiguous. I'm sure maybe everybody else has their vision of what that is, and I apologize, I didn't attend the conference. Maybe it was spelled out completely there. I feel like there's some uncertainty to some of this. And then we will be obligating ourselves to whatever this is. When we sign on to that, we're saying, yep, we agree with this, but yet I feel like it's out there somewhere. And I don't know if it means, we went down to the Excel and Ed. One of the speakers talked about, 2 years before kindergarten and 2 years after being public education, so to speak. I'm not sure I agree with all that philosophy. I think there is a point where kids need to take initiative and parents need to take initiative and families and communities. And I think that's there. I think that's availability. Now, at the same time, I do think we need to create access for those that have, some kind of a special need or some type of a limitation that, whether it's like Board Member Hanson talked about this morning, just because of the background, there was an uncertainty to moving forward. And so I do have questions with that and concerns. Also, is Utah Futures, would that be considered maintain a statewide platform? Is that, or are we talking something different? What is this, what is number 3? What is that referring to?
Can I
Yes,
respond?
please.
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate your comments. For kind of your first point around point 4 about reprioritizing state dollars, we kept the language in there at that level because I think that looks a little different based on which agency it's in, but we wanted all agencies to kind of look at things through this lens of access and what state dollars they have access to reprioritize those or consider reprioritizing those towards post-secondary access. One example of that is the Board of Regents recently put together recommendations around our state scholarship dollars. Knowing that our institutions are doing a really great job of awarding students for academic achievement in high school, we're having a conversation as a board about what's the right place for state dollars to be spent. And the Board of Regents has come to the conclusion that really more need-based aid is a priority for the Board of Regents. So we're looking at our state scholarships and what that could look like towards that end. To your second question, I know to number 3 for the online platform, the Utah Futures is currently kind of in flux, and I think it has been in flux for a while. What we want all of the boards to consider and potentially get behind is the idea that something like Utah Futures, an online platform of some sort that has tools for students to really answer the questions of what do I want to be, where should I go, and how can I pay, is a necessity in Utah. So I don't know if that answers your questions. Spencer, did you have anything to add? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose it did actually. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Superintendent Dixon?
Yeah, just an addendum to the Utah Futures conversation that's actually out right now for bid under an RFP. So Utah Futures as the platform or the company may change, but Utah Futures is moving forward and funded legislatively. So that piece is going on. I just didn't want to leave it out there that it's not. It's just up for RFP.
Board Member Cindy Davis? Oh, there we go.
Do we have access to that data of, the rationale that prompted this? How many dollars are being given out already for academic scholarships and what prompted that state dollars need to go this direction?
Sure, I can spit off some data, and I'm sure we can get you more if you have further questions. So, in looking at our state scholarships, what we find, or what we have found, is that 90% of the students who receive a merit-based scholarship from the state of Utah are receiving other merit-based scholarships as well. We are among the last states, I think, to get on board with a broader and more robust need-based program. Another thing to note is that about 91% of our merit scholarship recipients are white. And so I think as we look at our state and our changing demographics and the needs of our state, the board wanted to take up this issue as, are our dollars prioritized in the appropriate way? And philosophically, what is the role of a state in awarding merit? It seems to me what they landed on was that, again, our institutions are doing a really great job of awarding students for merit. So how can the state kind of help fill in the gap there? I don't know if that helps.
Follow up.
Yes.
Is this a living, breathing document?
This document?
Yeah, I'm just wondering because, we have I think it's great to have these college advisors in the schools. I think we're gonna outgrow it. I mean, when I hear the GARF folks say, well, we did an app and we've got 11,000 users now and all these kids are filling out the FAFSA because they can get a $50 gift certificate, which is way less expensive than putting an advisor in every school. So, I mean, at some point, I think we'll outgrow this, one person for 1,000 kids. Instead, we'll put an app out and give them all a $50 gift certificate. But is it a living, breathing document?
Yes, I would say absolutely. I'd love for all of our agencies to get together and kind of talk about what this framework could look like. And then I'd love to come back if I'm invited and talk through kind of the implementation of a framework. I think it's something we need to revisit regularly. I don't intend for this, or I don't know that the Regents or USHE intend for this to be kind of a one and done thing. I think this issue is going to continue to be really important for our state, and I think we absolutely need to revisit it. If I could comment on on your comment on the advisors, I do think that we have done a lot of work with surveying students and parents, and we have looked at how we're trying to get the word out about post-secondary options in Utah. We've done apps, we've done websites, we've done publications, we've sent folks out there to do presentations, and none of that has meaningfully moved the needle in 10 to 20 years. What we do know is that the advisors, through surveys and everything else, the advisors are filling a need where students and parents want someone to walk them through the process. I think that there is only so far that you can put kind of resources and digital resources out there for students, especially those who might not consider themselves college bound. Having someone on the ground who's always there, who can pull students out of non-core classes to help them fill out applications and talk to them about what their options are, help them fill out the FAFSA. It has proven to be incredibly meaningful in the schools they've been in for about 12 years. In those schools they've been in for about 12 years, they've seen the college enrollment rate of their senior class increase 5 to 9%, so 5 to 9%. None of our other programs have data like that. And as we are continually the last in the nation for FAFSA completion, as we are leaving millions of dollars on the table every year that our students could use. And luckily in Utah, our tuition is relatively low compared to other states. So if you receive a full Pell Grant that pays for the full cost of attendance at many of our schools, and connecting students to those opportunities and also to our state scholarship dollars, to post-secondary advanced coursework in their high school, I know that the board and the UTech Board of Trustees and others do see that the really integration of that single person in a class in the school makes a meaningful difference there.
Okay, thank you. And just quickly, I would just ask you to consider the timeline of implementation. I just got an email from a parent yesterday who's super frustrated because her daughter started on the path in 8th grade and kind of in good faith, and then the changes that were made last year just sort of yanked that expectation of what had been planned for. So just please consider our kids who are starting in good faith and then feel like we as a state aren't honoring our end of the bargain, so to speak.
Okay, do you want to comment on this? There we go.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Spencer Jenkins from the Board of Regents. Your comments, we very much appreciate them. And what I hope in response to your question about, is this a living, breathing document? What we hope to be building is a living, breathing relationship around college access. To your point about the Regent Scholarship and those changes were legislative changes. We did not, some of these changes we did seek, some changes were legislatively mandated. What we feel like is by having a more living, breathing relationship with the governing boards of education in Utah, it will create a little more of a proactive voice when it comes to college access that does help us create a more leading strategy around state scholarship programs, state aid, so that when legislators do have some interest in making changes or they have concerns, as the three governing boards, we have a little more of a solidified voice around this issue.
So we have quite a few other comments and stuff. We don't have a motion on the table, but I just want to remind the board members what this is. What this is there's three organizations that want to come together in a joint resolution that will drive future conversation, future direction, future when the three are trying to align instead of being three separate entities. And there's been quite a bit of work that's gone into putting this together. There was feedback that went back to your group. So this doesn't have any guarantees in it except by being a part of this resolution that these four areas are going to be an area of focus and everyone's going to play their role in that. It's not going to take funding away or grab whatever. It's to try to unify these three education entities in kind of a common purpose and goal to take care of these things. Did I state that did I miss
Perfect.
any of that?
No, that was
So
great.
we're getting down into the weeds of operation and what to expect next, and
Right.
and the action will be done not by this group, but the actions will be done by these separate entities, ours included. So we play a role in this on the things that we do moving forward as priorities and other things. So you can keep that in mind. Board Member Janet Cannon.
Thank you, Chair. I feel uncomfortable about the language in number 4 where it says reprioritize state dollars. I would feel okay about it if it just said improve access to post-secondary education options. I know that in years past, we have had state dollars that we have shared with higher ed, and that's kind of been a real sticky wicket for a number of years. And if I were a legislator and you brought me this document that said reprioritize state dollars to improve access to post-secondary education, and it's signed by the State Board of Education, I would think that the State Board of Education would be okay with giving up some dollars to higher ed. And I think when all three of us come under that single funding source, and there's always competition for those dollars, that it's my responsibility as a board member of the State Board of Education to try to get some more dollars for public education, which for the past 30 years has been the lowest per pupil amount in the United States. So if you could take out the reprioritize state dollars part, I would be in favor of the rest.
Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
I see these as vague on purpose because they're aspirational for each individual board to look at. So number 4, when I read reprioritize state dollars, it's just what we're going to be talking about in a few minutes when we get our legislative priorities. One of our requests is to reprioritize a funding request and look for more money for concurrent enrollment and the accelerated program. And so that's within our wheelhouse here at the State Board of Education, is looking at our funding source and our current appropriations and saying, how are we going to look at things through this lens of access to secondary? Because secondary access isn't just left to K-12 or the higher ed institutions and the technical colleges. Part of that access is us and the things that we collaborate with these other institutions with, as well as just things that we provide, our comprehensive counseling supports, and how do we prioritize emphases within that realm and those. And so when this language isn't meant to say, let's take money from K-12 and give it to the Regents, Board of Regents or the technical. It's each of these three groups who are signing the bottom of this paper are saying, inside your wheelhouse of appropriation and world, what are you doing to provide access and to encourage access for students into that next part of their life? And so with that, I would like to make a motion that we adopt this resolution.
We have a motion and a second, and the motion is to adopt the joint resolution to direct education leaders to develop a state post-secondary education access framework. Discussion to the motion. Board Member Jenny Earl.
I guess mine goes back to a question. Now, I don't know if it's pertinent now to the motion or not. But I'm just curious on number 3 about the amount of data we're looking at in order to perpetuate. I know we're not just talking K-12, we're talking adult, potential career paths. Do we have any idea what all we're going to be putting into this as far, and I know we're in the weeds. I'm sorry, that's important though for me when we're talking the numbers here, or the wording here, what it looks like. Do we have any idea on what that platform looks like?
Do you mean?
Again, so yeah, how much data? What is the data we're putting into this?
Right.
Is it all secondary? Is it all workforce services? Is this an all-inclusive so that, any agency can go here and pull out whatever?
So you're talking about Utah Futures and maybe the next iteration of it, that statewide online platform
I suppose,
piece?
is this specifically Utah Futures is this what we're identifying here?
So.
It says
yeah.
authoritative, is that what that is?
Yeah, so Utah Futures has been around for a while. The funding for it has been one time and in flux. And right now, as Superintendent Dixon mentioned, the kind of platform of that service is out for RFP through Talent Ready Utah. And so I think what number 3 is saying is that whatever that service is, we need to maintain it. We need to make sure the data is robust. We need to work with UTEC and all of our partner agencies to ensure that we have really great databases. I think in my world, what I envision that to be is really a website that answers those 3 questions I mentioned earlier, which is what should I be? So interest profilers, career assessments, those sorts of things. Where should I go? Types of degrees and programs that are available in any post-secondary institution. And then how can I pay? So connection to FAFSA resources, the scholarship database, those sorts of things. So I think that is going to be a really specific and meaningful data-backed tool for the advisors, for example, to use in their conversations with students about those 3 questions. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, okay. I have, a concern that we're going to get ahead of ourselves. In other words, that I think technology and the way education is going to go, we're going to be forming things that we're going to be spending money on things that we're going to end up backtracking on because we've got a different, innovative way of doing it. And so anyways, who knows? I guess that we'll just see what the future brings, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that whatever that looks like, if the form that takes, whether it's an app or something different, I think we'll need to continually look at to make sure that we're meeting students where they are. So that's a good point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Board Member Linda Hansen.
When you're talking about underrepresented populations, are you including people with disabilities? Because, only 30% of them have jobs. And of the ones who want jobs, only 30% of them have jobs. And so I just wonder if those conversations are taking place when you're talking about ethnic diversity and all those other diversities. Are you talking about people with disabilities as well?
Yeah, I think we would like to be expansive. When we define underrepresented, it's really populations and ethnicities and any other subgroup that is historically underrepresented in higher ed. And so I think as a state, we need to decide what that looks like and then move forward with a strategy around that as well. Thank you. Yeah.
Board Member Cannon, Janet Cannon.
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. The amendment would be to remove on number 4 the words reprioritize state dollars to, and just begin number 4 with improve access to post-secondary education options.
Okay, we have a proposed amendment, but I'm not sure if it's, we're to the point where we either take or reject on this because of the groups that are on there. We can certainly give feedback.
Well, and can I speak a little to?
Yes.
The other 2 groups are post-secondary, and so their funding streams are improved by reprioritizing those state dollars, whereas the K-12 might be looking at a deficit if we reprioritize those state dollars.
You want to?
yeah, I
We
mean,
don't, before I accept her, isn't that where we're at? You're
Sure, I
at this
mean,
place of
certainly
not
this-
amendments?
It's certainly the discretion of the board to make changes, and we'll just work with the other boards. If this change is adopted by this board, we'll try and work with them in adopting that change.
Yeah, and I just want to echo what Chair Huntsman and Vice Chair Cummins mentioned earlier about this is kind of hopefully a guiding light document as we kind of work more closely together and develop those relationships. I anticipate that whatever this structure looks like, we would love to come back and have further conversations with you as a board. And so that language in there, I don't think it prohibits the next step of actual implementation. I think it's there to kind of facilitate a conversation about what this could look like in the post-secondary access space. And then we'd love to come back and talk about implementation when we're ready to do that. So I don't know if that helps, but.
So is your amendment, or are you still wanting to move with your proposed amendment?
I would like to move with the proposed amendment.
Okay, so the proposed amendment is to change the words, did you get
Just-
that?
Just delete 4 words, reprioritize state dollars to. Just delete that from number 4. And then number 4 would read, improve access to post-secondary education options, especially for underrepresented populations.
Okay, it's going to show up here to make sure that we're getting this right. Okay, do we have a second while she's bringing that? Is there a second? Second. Discussion to the proposed amendment as it's coming up. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins?
So my question is just a technicality of should the motion be to recommend a change? Because we can't amend this document. The document doesn't belong to us, right? And so do we want to recommend a change to remove those 4 words is my question, is the motion. So
And I'm not the judge and jury on this. However, there's a resolution that came before us the second time, and my understanding is from the collective group that it's to accept or not accept, and so it's like, okay, where do we go from here? It's either we don't like it, or we do, or we don't.
No,
but now we're
I
putting
think
up-
if there are changes this board would like to see, I think what would be most helpful is if we could adopt it, if you guys could adopt kind of it with whatever changes you have, and then we could take that changed resolution back to the other boards for their consideration.
All right.
And
So
I
we
would-
want to
but
make sure we meet their expectations too.
And
Right.
I would say, I think, given what Board Member Cannon is saying is a legitimate concern, and I think for the other respective boards, I don't want to speak for them, but I would guess that they would be perfectly willing to adopt those changes as well. So I think, as far as, for purposes of efficiency, I think adopting this change by this board formally, the other boards will probably line up behind that.
Okay, so we now have the proposed amendment to delete from number 4 the words who's got me started on that? Reprioritize state dollars to, was there another change? Okay, that's the change. We're speaking to the proposed amendment. Board Member Lear.
I support the amendment because my concern was going to add reprioritize.
It's contagious,
You've
isn't
tied me
it?
in yes, you've tied me in knots now. I said those words are not meant to be verbs. That's part of the problem. But my change was going to be to end increase. I think we've got to stop just. I think we should all stop accepting the fact that this is as many dollars as they're ever going to be, and never stop saying we need more money for education. So I was going to add increase, but this accomplishes the same end. So I support it.
So you're supportive, thank you. Board Member Bolter?
Just a technical question. If we pass the resolution with that change, but then it goes before your board and they don't agree with it, then will it come back here for another revote?
Yes.
Okay, I
You guys just
wanted
love
to-
seeing me, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
because I'm hesitant about the reprioritize part. I know, right? You said it. And I'm concerned that members of the governing board, us that are elected to oversee these state funds, weren't invited to the table. I know staff was, but we weren't, and we're the ones elected to oversee these funds. And so it feels like after the decisions were made, now we want you to sign on as the governing board. And so I would ask that perhaps we invite some of us that are elected to specifically oversee these things to come to the table and
Vice Chair
and
Brittany
speak.
Cummins?
And I would just add that we were all invited to the summit where this was discussed. So just a clarification that we were all invited to that discussion on that evening to be a part of any amendments that we wanted to make at that time.
It was a day in Utah County.
Yes, it was.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments to the proposed amendment. So let's vote on it. And the proposed amendment is to delete from number 4 the words reprioritize state dollars to. Hey, it worked. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Voting, you opposed? We have one. Okay, so we have a amended motion before us to adopt the joint resolution to direct education leaders to develop a state post-secondary education access framework as amended. I'm not seeing any other discussion to that amended motion, so let's vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Will the noes raise your hand? We'll get the, we have two. Got it. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Okay. Board members, we're going to take a 10-minute break. 10 minutes, so let's jump right back in here. Thank you.